On a stormy cliff, a battered maid takes her last breath until a ruthless kingpin pulls her back to life and claims the one thing he's never protected before: a heart. He locks the gates, lays down rules, and swears he'll keep her breathing, but danger follows her like headlights in the rain. A scrap of fabric hides numbers that could expose a fake charity moving real weapons, and a red envelope whispers, "Return the girl, or watch your family bleed." Inside the fortress, someone smiles too sweetly, cameras blink at the wrong time, and a brother becomes a bargaining chip. She learns to spot tales, he learns to be gentle, and the city waits for a war started by a lie. At the cliffs where she almost died, a live broadcast flips the truth. A traitor takes aim, and one kiss could set the whole house on fire. If love brought her back from the edge, will it save them, or burn everything they touch when the secret behind that red thread finally comes to light? The rain lashed against the cliffside road like angry fists, matching the thundering of Livia's heart as she gripped the steering wheel. Her hands trembled, knuckles white, while lightning illuminated the bruises blooming across her forearms. The hidden scrap of apron hem crinkled in her pocket, its embroidered numbers a mystery she'd preserved through years of service at the Hale estate. Headlights blazed in her rearview mirror. A black SUV bore down on her, engine roaring over the storm. Livia pressed the accelerator, but the wet road betrayed her. The SUV's bumper clipped her rear quarter panel. Her world spun. Time slowed as her car tumbled toward the guardrail. Glass shattered, sea spray bursting through the spiderweb cracks. Salt water mixed with the copper taste of blood in her mouth. Metal screamed against metal. Brakes screeched nearby. Through the haze of pain and rain, Livia registered a sleek black coupe sliding to a halt. A tall figure emerged, moving with lethal grace. Even half-conscious, she recognized Salvo Orsini, the Mafia don whose name was whispered in fearful tones throughout the city. Strong hands pulled her from the wreckage, her chest burned, vision darkening at the edges. Then pressure, hard, rhythmic compressions forcing life back into her body. She gasped, coughing up seawater and blood. "Breathe," Salvo commanded, his voice low and controlled. His expensive jacket settled around her shoulders, warm despite the rain. Nearby, his driver spoke rapidly into a phone, coordinating their escape route. "Wait," Livia wheezed, trying to push away from him. "The hem! I need to go back." "No." His tone left no room for argument. Gunfire crackled from the top of the cliff, bullets pinging off the guardrail. Salvo lifted her effortlessly, shielding her body with his own as he carried her to the coupe. The leather seats were butter-soft against her rain-soaked skin. Salvo slid in beside her, his cold hands capturing her wrists when she tried to reach for the door. "Be still," he ordered, checking her pulse. "You're under my protection now." The words held no warmth, but they rang with absolute certainty. Through the fog of pain, Livia's mind raced back to hours earlier, watching Benedict Hale feed ledger after ledger into the study fireplace, his usually immaculate shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal expensive cufflinks. She'd been dusting the bookshelf, invisible as always, when she heard him on the phone. "The maid knows too much. Dispose of her tonight." The coupe accelerated smoothly, eating up the coastal road as their pursuers fell behind. Livia pressed her face against the cool window, watching lightning illuminate the churning ocean below. Her fingers found the hidden scrap of fabric inside Salvo's jacket, the mysterious numbers she'd discovered years ago while mending linens, carefully protected ever since. Rain drummed against the roof as they approached the city. Salvo's driver navigated the empty streets with precision, taking a maze-like route that lost any remaining tail. Near midnight, they approached an imposing structure, Orsini Hall, rising like a fortress above the surrounding buildings. Iron gates swung open silently. The coupe descended into an underground garage, security doors closing behind them with heavy metallic clangs. In the distance, police sirens wailed uselessly, searching the wrong streets entirely. Livia's consciousness wavered, exhaustion and injury taking their toll. Her fingers clutched the torn hem scrap inside the borrowed jacket, holding on to this one piece of evidence like a lifeline. Through half-closed eyes, she studied Salvo's sharp profile, wondering if she'd traded one dangerous man's custody for another's. The garage lights cast harsh shadows across his features as he spoke quietly with his security team. Despite her fear, she noticed details with the heightened awareness of someone accustomed to observing from the margins. The precise way he held himself, the deference his men showed without cowering, the calculating intelligence in his eyes when they fell on her. Her ribs ached with each breath, tasting copper and salt on her tongue. The leather seat creaked as she shifted, trying to find a position that hurt less. The sound drew Salvo's attention immediately, his gaze sharp as a blade as he assessed her condition. More men materialized from the shadows of the garage, a medical team, she realized, noting their equipment. Salvo gave brief, clipped orders in Italian. His cold efficiency should have frightened her more, but after the chaos of her escape, there was something almost reassuring about his absolute control of the situation. The storm still raged outside, but here in his underground domain, everything moved with precise purpose. Security cameras tracked every movement, armed guards stood at attention, and somewhere above, Livia knew, lay a world she'd only glimpsed through windows while cleaning other people's homes. Her head spun as shock began to set in properly. The last thing she registered was Salvo's voice, still commanding but somehow distant. "Get her stabilized. No one touches her without my authorization." Then darkness claimed her, and she surrendered to it, the mysterious numbers still safely hidden against her heart. The antiseptic brightness pierced Livia's eyelids before she fully woke. Her body felt weightless, yet heavy, suspended in the strange territory between sleep and consciousness. The steady beep of monitors filled the pristine clinic room tucked away in Orsini Hall's lower level. "Easy now," a gentle voice cautioned as Livia tried to sit up. The house medic, Dr. Chen, according to her badge, adjusted the IV drip and checked fresh bandages wrapping Livia's ribs. "You've got some nasty bruising, but nothing's broken." Dawn hadn't yet touched the high windows when the door opened. Salvo entered, his dark hair still damp from a shower, wearing an impeccably tailored suit despite the early hour. His presence filled the clinical space with quiet authority. "You're safe," he stated. No warmth in his tone, but absolute certainty. "There are rules. No outside calls. No wandering without escort. No lies. I'll know." He gestured to two people who'd entered behind him. "Jonas heads security. Petra manages the household. They'll get you settled." Jonas stood like a soldier at parade rest, alert, professional, studying her with analytical eyes. The housekeeper, Petra, offered a maternal smile that didn't quite reach her watchful gaze. She held a stack of folded clothing. "I can't stay," Livia protested, voice rough. "I just need to retrieve something, then I'll disappear." "The men who ran you off that cliff will return to finish what they started," Salvo cut in. "You're not leaving." "My apron, then. Just let me get my old apron from the estate. There are numbers sewn into the hem, numbers that might matter." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Salvo's eyes narrowed fractionally. "Numbers?" "Found them years ago, cleaning the library. Stitched them inside my hem for safekeeping. I never understood what they meant, but Mr. Hale..." She swallowed hard. "When he saw me watching him burn those ledgers..." "Sir." Jonas stepped forward, tablet in hand. The pursuit vehicles carried Vieri colors. Their crew never touches civilians without specific orders. "Placement rather than chance," Salvo murmured, studying Livia with new intensity. "Someone wanted you in that house. Someone wanted you to find those numbers." Livia's hands twisted in the blanket. "I just wanted to work, to survive." "And now?" Salvo's question carried weight. "I want to live," she whispered. He nodded once, as if her answer satisfied something. "Petra will show you to your suite. Jonas has temporary security passes ready. Dr. Chen wants you on bed rest today." Hours passed, in a haze of pain medication and fitful sleep. Petra brought soup and helped Livia shower, keeping clinical. Distance despite her gentle manner. The guest suite was larger than any room Livia had slept in before, with heavy drapes and a bed that felt like clouds. But sleep proved elusive. At 3 a.m., she found herself padding down stone corridors, guided by a silent guard to Salvo's private kitchen. A small space nothing like the industrial kitchen, where she'd once been burned for dropping a plate. Salvo stood at the stove, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to reveal forearm tattoos. Without turning, he cracked eggs into a pan. "Hungry." "How did you know I'd come?" "You haven't eaten properly in days. Trauma does that." He slid perfect eggs onto a plate. "But you need strength." While she ate, Livia studied the photos lining one wall. Women of different ages, some smiling, some serious, all had the same look in their eyes that Livia recognized from her mirror. Survivors. "The house helped them?" she asked quietly. "We protect our own." Salvo ate standing, positioned to watch both doors, movements economical. Some stayed, some left for new lives, all lived. Thunder still growled distantly, but the rain had finally stopped. Livia felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down. Salvo walked her back to the guest suite himself, pausing at the threshold. "Double the watches," he ordered the guards. "No one enters this wing without direct clearance." Livia sank into the cloud-soft bed, mind spinning with questions about numbers and ledgers and why the infamous Vieri crew would target a simple maid. But sleep pulled her under before she could voice any of them. The last thing she registered was Salvo's voice in the hallway, low and deadly. "Check every thread of her background. If someone placed her at Hale's estate, I want to know who and why." In the distance, thunder faded to silence as dawn crept closer, painting the sky in shades of pearl and rose. But inside Orsini Hall's stone walls, shadows still held secrets, and the night's protection detail stood vigilant, guarding a maid who carried mysterious numbers and the dangerous knowledge they represented. Livia drifted between waking and dreams, feeling safer than she had in years, despite being in a Mafia Don's fortress. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or maybe the lingering effects of medication, but she could have sworn she heard Salvo pause outside her door one last time, his quiet words carrying through the wood. "Sleep well, little ghost. Tomorrow we begin unraveling why they wanted you to see those ledgers burn." Dawn painted the stone corridors in pale gold as Livia followed Jonas's measured steps. Her borrowed clothes felt strange, soft cotton instead of starched uniform, but her mind stayed sharp despite the lingering ache from yesterday's crash. The small library door opened to reveal Salvo at a leather chair, a gray file, and steaming coffee cups arranged on the table beside him. He gestured to the seat across from him without rising. "Tell me about Hale's ledgers," he said, no preamble. "Needed." "Everything you remember." Livia wrapped cold fingers around the coffee cup. "He kept them in the third drawer of his desk, leather-bound, always locked. I only cleaned that room when he was away." "But you saw him burn them." "Yes." The memory flickered, flames reflecting off silver cufflinks with an odd crescent symbol. She'd noticed them at the spring gala, when Hale hosted men who spoke in whispers. There was a party first, important men in dark suits. Salvo's eyes narrowed. "Crescents on their cuffs?" She nodded, throat tight. "The head maid caught me looking. Told me to never touch the red thread in my apron seam. Said it wasn't meant for me to find. Yet you kept the numbers." "I memorized them before cutting the hem, just in case." Her fingers trembled on the cup. Jonas cleared his throat from his post by the door. "Sir, the room is ready." Salvo closed the file with a snap. "You're moving to my wing. Closer response time if things go wrong." "Your wing?" Livia's pulse jumped. "Adjacent to my quarters, with Elena guarding your door. I respect boundaries." His tone left no room for argument. "But I need you contained and secure." The new room was elegant but practical. Heavy curtains, reinforced windows, clear sightlines to both exits. Elena, a stern-faced woman with quick eyes, took position outside while Livia unpacked her few borrowed items. Through the morning, Livia sat at an antique desk, carefully sketching the memorized numbers onto crisp notepaper. The sequence emerged in her precise handwriting. 7249 31 885 EY. Below that, 4412 67 223 M. More followed, each group separated by dashes. Salvo appeared silently at her shoulder, a tech hovering behind him with a camera. "May I?" She nodded, watching as they photographed her work from multiple angles. "I'm sending a team to retrieve your apron from the estate's laundry," Salvo said. "If it's still there. Be careful. The laundry supervisor keeps detailed inventory." The explosion hit without warning. Glass rattled in every frame as the blast wave rolled through the mansion. Livia's mind flashed to other explosions, other fears. But before she could move, Salvo's iron grip yanked her below the window line. "Status!" he barked into a radio. Static crackled, then Jonas's voice. "Car bomb, 1 block east. No breach of our perimeter. Sweeping for secondary devices." Salvo kept Livia pressed against the wall, his body between her and the windows, until the all clear came through. She felt his heartbeat, steady despite everything, and realized her fingers were clutched in his shirt. "Show me," she whispered. He helped her to the roof, his coat settling over her shoulders against the night wind. From this height, she could see the smoking crater where the car had been, emergency lights painting the scene in red and blue. "This is what follows you now," Salvo said simply, no drama in his voice. "This is why you can't leave." Livia stared at the destruction, her hair whipping around. Her face, the truth settled like lead in her stomach. Leaving meant death, either hers or whoever tried to help her. There was no way out except through. The night wind caught Salvo's coat, wrapping it tighter around her like an embrace, or a chain, perhaps both. She watched smoke curl into the darkness and accepted that her world had narrowed to these stone walls and the dangerous man beside her. Elena's voice came through Salvo's radio. "Perimeter secure, sir, but we found something. A silver cufflink in the bomb debris. Crescent symbol." Salvo's jaw tightened. He didn't look at Livia, but his hand found her elbow, steadying. "They're sending messages now, getting bold." "Or desperate," Livia murmured, remembering flames reflecting off those same cufflinks as ledgers burned. "Jonas is running background on every guest at Hale's spring gala. We'll find the connection." Salvo guided her toward the roof access door. "For now, you stay close. No wandering, no chances." The descent back to her new room felt like sinking deeper into shadow and safety both. Elena resumed her post, expression neutral but alert. Inside, Livia traced the numbers she'd written, wondering what secrets they held that were worth killing for. Through the wall, she heard Salvo moving in his own quarters. Quiet footsteps, a phone conversation too muffled to make out. Strange, how his presence both unsettled and reassured her. Stranger still, how quickly she'd adapted to this new reality of guards and bombed streets and a Mafia Don's protection. The night settled around Orsini Hall like a shroud, broken only by security lights and the distant wail of sirens. In her borrowed room, in her borrowed clothes, Livia watched shadows dance across the ceiling and tried not to think about ledgers or crescents or the way Salvo's coat still carried his scent of sandalwood and gunpowder. Morning light filtered through reinforced windows as Livia hunched over a tablet in the operations room. Black coffee cooling beside her. Multiple screens lined the walls, displaying security feeds from across the city. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she couldn't look away from the news coverage of last night's explosion. "Wait!" She jabbed a finger at a debris photo. "That symbol! I've seen it before!" Salvo leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. In the image, a twisted piece of metal bore a distinctive crescent marking. "The cufflinks," she continued. "Benedict wore them at the spring gala, right before—" Her voice trailed off, remembering the night she'd seen him burning ledgers. Benedict Hale. Salvo's voice carried quiet menace. Charitable foundation director, children's hospital donor, pillar of the community. His lip curled. And private banker to Rinaldo Vieri's network. The name hit Livia like ice water. Vieri? The men who chased me on the cliff. Wore Vieri colors, yes. Salvo paced the length of the desk. Hale launders money through his charities, cleans it for Vieri's. Operations? You're both leverage and a loose end. Whatever you saw, whatever those numbers mean, they want it buried. Jonas entered with a fresh pot of coffee and satellite images. Sweep teams found tire tracks matching our cliff pursuers. They're getting sloppy. Or confident, Salvo countered. Livia rubbed her temples, processing. Her quiet life serving tea and managing household schedules had somehow entangled her in a war between criminal empires. The weight of it pressed against her chest. Midday sun streamed through bullet-resistant glass when Petra knocked, carrying a stack of cleaned and mended clothes. "For you, dear." The housekeeper's smile was warm. "And a sewing kit to feel useful." I remember how idle hands can make a troubled mind worse. "Thank you." Livia accepted the familiar weight of fabric and tools, grateful for any touch of normalcy. She noticed Jonas in the hallway, installing something along her doorframe. "Tamper strip," he explained without looking up. "Extra layer of security. Records any attempts to breach while you're sleeping." The day crept toward dusk, shadows lengthening across marble floors. Livia had just finished organizing her borrowed room when Elena's voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, courier at the gate with a priority envelope. Red paper marked urgent." "Scan it," Salvo ordered. Minutes later, Jonas delivered the envelope himself, expression grim. The address read simply, "The Reborn Girl." Livia's hands shook as she opened it. Inside lay a strip of familiar fabric, edges blackened by flame, her apron hem, but the red thread that had held the numbers was clearly cut away, leaving ragged holes. "They got to it first." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Before the fire." Salvo's fingers clenched the envelope, crumpling the expensive paper. "The courier?" "Vanished into the evening crowd," Jonas reported. "Professional, clean escape. Get a ghost team ready." Salvo's order cut through the tension. "First light, they sweep the ash pits at Hale's estate. Anything that survived the burning, ledger fragments, thread, receipts. I want it found." Livia stared at the ruined fabric, mind racing. I can still help. The numbers, I saw them so many times while washing that apron. If I focus, really concentrate. Jonas set a slim book on her desk. Beginner's Guide to Basic Codes. Might help organize your thoughts, find patterns in what you remember. She touched the book's cover, determination replacing fear. I'll work through the night. There has to be a system, a reason they were sewn in that specific order. The hours ticked by as Livia filled pages with possible number combinations, cross-referencing them against code structures. Elena brought fresh coffee. Jonas checked her door's new security measures. Petra left a plate of sandwiches she barely touched. Through it all, she felt Salvo's presence in the adjacent room. His measured footsteps, quiet phone conversations in Italian. The occasional clink of a glass. Strange how quickly his proximity had become a comfort rather than a threat. The stripped hem lay on her desk like an accusation. Someone had known exactly what to take, what to destroy. But they didn't know she'd spent countless hours mindlessly tracing those numbers while folding laundry, that they'd become etched in her memory through pure repetition. She wrote another sequence, then another. The codebook offered structure, suggesting ways to group digits meaningfully. Some combinations looked like dates, others like coordinates. A pattern was emerging if she could just stay focused long enough to see it clearly. Security lights cast blue-white gleams through her window as the city settled into night. Somewhere in the darkness, Benedict Hale was likely planning his next move. But here, surrounded by stone walls and armed guards, protected by a man who dealt in calculated violence, Livia had found an unexpected sanctuary. She turned another page in the codebook, wrote another string of numbers. The night stretched ahead, full of possibilities and threats, but she refused to waste it on fear. Every digit she recovered was one more piece of truth they couldn't burn away. Elena's voice came softly through the door. "More coffee, miss?" "Please," Livia answered, not looking up from her work. The numbers were there, waiting to be remembered, and she had all night to find them. Dawn hadn't broken yet when Livia hunched over shipping manifests with Jonas. Her reconstructed numbers spread across the operations room desk. Her tea had gone cold hours ago, forgotten in the intensity of their work. Here, another pattern. Jonas traced his finger along a column. These matched the standard format for cross-border routing codes. The door clicked open. Salvo strode in, his black jacket glistening with rain droplets, the scent of engine oil clinging to him. His expression was unreadable, but his shoulders carried tension from whatever off-book meeting he'd attended. "Progress?" he asked, shrugging off the wet jacket. "Maybe." Livia rubbed her tired eyes. "The sequences are starting to make sense." Salvo studied her face for a moment. "Come with me. You need a break and training." The next hour transformed into a strange dance of survival lessons. In the mansion's east wing, Salvo demonstrated how to spot someone following you. Watch reflections, not people. Glass storefronts, car mirrors. They'll tell you more than turning around ever will. Livia absorbed everything, memorizing exit routes and studying sightlines until her head spun. When panic threatened to overwhelm her, Salvo noticed immediately. "Breathe with me," he commanded softly. 4 counts in, 4 out. "Let me show you something too," Livia offered, once her heart steadied. In the kitchen, she lined up 3 types of tea leaves. "The right way, the way that centers you." She taught him the precise water temperature, the counting of seconds, the patient, waiting. His large hands looked strange holding the delicate cup, but he followed her instructions with the same focus he'd given combat lessons. 90 seconds, no more, she explained. Like counting breaths when you're afraid. His eyes caught hers over the steaming cup. Understanding passed between them. They were both teaching each other their versions of survival. By afternoon, they returned to the numbers with fresh minds. Livia traced routes on a city map while Jonas pulled up charity records. Hale's foundation sponsors weekly deliveries, Jonas reported. Medical supplies, supposedly. The dates. Livia's finger landed on a point. Look, every major arms seizure in the past month lines up with the delivery route. She kept marking points until a clear pattern emerged. The charity trucks were following the exact paths where weapons had been intercepted. Perfect cover for moving illegal cargo. Who would suspect a philanthropist's aid vehicles? He's hiding in plain sight, Salvo said quietly, using good works to mask gun running. Night fell as they dug deeper. Livia's bruises ached, and she winced, trying to reach for another file. Salvo noticed. Let me check those bandages. In the soft lamplight, his fingers were surprisingly gentle as he unwrapped her wrist. Livia's hand trembled, exhaustion making her unsteady. Without a word, Salvo caught her shaking fingers in his. Instead of the kiss she half expected, he pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture of comfort that respected the careful boundaries he'd established. The tenderness of it made her breath catch. "Thank you," she whispered, unsure if she meant the bandage or the kiss or everything else. He simply nodded, finishing the wrapping in comfortable silence. Close to midnight, the tech team confirmed what they'd pieced together. The numbers weren't just a record, they were a schedule. 10 days of upcoming shipments, all carefully coded into that apron hem. "We can stop them," Salvo said, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. The words settled in the quiet room like a promise. Livia tried to respond, but exhaustion dragged at her. Her head dipped toward the desk as the day's tension finally caught up with her. Through half-closed eyes, she saw Salvo move toward the cabinet, returning with a soft blanket. As consciousness faded, she felt the gentle weight of wool settling over her shoulders. Salvo adjusted the desk lamp, leaving it lit. He'd noticed how she flinched in darkness. That small kindness followed her into sleep, a reminder that even in this dangerous new world, she wasn't facing the shadows alone. The operations room settled into night shift quiet. Papers rustled as Jonas filed away their findings. Somewhere in the building, guards changed rotation. But at the desk, Livia slept peacefully under Salvo's protection, the decoded numbers finally revealing their secrets, while the man himself stood watch over both her and the knowledge she'd helped uncover. Through the bulletproof windows, the city's lights blurred in a light rain, creating halos that mirrored the desk lamp's gentle glow. The next few days would bring danger as they moved against Hale's operation, but for now, in this moment, there was only the sound of Livia's steady breathing and the quiet certainty that they'd found something worth fighting for. Truth, justice, and perhaps something more personal neither was ready to name. The lamp cast soft shadows across the scattered papers, illuminating fragments of the codes that had brought them together. Maps marked with Livia's careful handwriting lay beside Salvo's tactical notes, their different worlds merging on paper just as they were beginning to merge in life. Late morning sun warmed the cobblestones as Livia stepped from the car, her heart racing despite Salvo's steady presence beside her. The open-air market spread before them in a maze of colorful stalls and wandering shoppers. "Remember what we practiced," Salvo murmured, his hand ghosting her lower back. "Check reflections, mark exits, stay aware." Jonas took point while 2 guards flanked them at a distance. The market vendor who'd guaranteed their safety nodded from his spice stall, the neutral territory allowing them to test if Livia's presence would draw attention. She breathed in the scents of fresh bread and coffee, trying to focus past her anxiety. A woman haggled over tomatoes. Children chased pigeons across the square. Normal life continued around them, oblivious to the danger she might bring. Salvo guided her past displays of fresh flowers and hanging copper pots. "Tell me what you see," he prompted quietly. "Mirror in the jewelry case at 2 o'clock, Livia recited, remembering his lessons. "Clear path to the south exit, 3 cameras on the corner building." Her voice steadied as she concentrated on the task. "Good!" His approval warmed her more than the sun. "Keep going." They worked their way through the market, Livia growing more confident as she spotted potential risks and escape routes. The morning crowd thickened, but Jonas kept them in a loose bubble of space. The first sign something was wrong came just after noon. A sharp whistle cut through the market noise. Salvo's hand tightened on her arm. "Movement," Jonas warned through his earpiece. 2 bikes approaching fast. The motorcycles burst through the crowd, engines roaring, shoppers scattered as the riders aimed straight for Livia. Time seemed to slow. Salvo moved like liquid violence. One moment he was beside her, the next he had spun to place his body between her and the threat. His arm locked around her waist, pulling her tight against him as he backed them toward cover. The first rider reached for a weapon. Salvo's response was brutal efficiency, a precise strike that sent the man flying from his bike. The motorcycle skidded into a fruit stand as its rider hit the ground. The second attacker fared no better. Jonas intercepted him with a guard throw that ended in a sickening crack of broken bone. Civilians ducked behind stalls while the guards herded them to safety. It was over in seconds. No blood, no gore, just swift, controlled violence that left both threats neutralized. Livia trembled against Salvo's chest, her fingers clutching his jacket. She should have been terrified. She was terrified, but not of him. Even as he'd moved with lethal precision, his hold on her had remained gentle. He'd been a shield of muscle and warmth, keeping her safe, while dealing out cold efficiency to their attackers. The market vendor's security swarmed in to handle cleanup while Salvo guided her back to the car. Her legs felt unsteady, adrenaline making her shake. "You're safe," he murmured, one hand still protectively curved around her shoulder. They never got close. The drive back to Orsini Hall passed in a blur. Late afternoon sun slanted through the windows as they entered his wing. Livia caught her reflection in a mirror. Her face was smudged with powder residue from the market chaos. Salvo noticed, too. He led her to a quiet sitting room and dampened a cloth with water from a crystal decanter. His touch was startlingly gentle as he cleaned her cheek, those same hands that had dispatched attackers now treating her like something precious. "Who taught you," she whispered, unable to stop herself from asking, "to hold someone so carefully?" He paused, thumb brushing her jawline. "No one taught me," he admitted quietly. "I'm teaching myself, with you." The words settled in her chest like warm honey. This dangerous man who could break bones without hesitation was learning tenderness for her sake. Later, sitting on the edge of her bed, Livia replayed the day's events. She could still feel the solid wall of his chest against her back, the protective curl of his body shielding her from harm. The memory should have frightened her. His capacity for violence had been on full display. Instead, she felt oddly secure. He'd stood between her and danger without hesitation. Those careful hands had kept her safe through chaos. The lamp beside her bed dimmed to a soft glow, Salvo's standing order to help her sleep without total darkness. She slid under the covers, letting the day's tension slowly release. Through her partly open door, she heard the quiet footsteps of guards changing shifts. Somewhere deeper in the wing, Salvo would be reviewing security footage, planning countermeasures, keeping his promise of protection. The market attack had proved she was still being hunted. Yet here in this room, in his wing of the mansion, with his careful consideration surrounding her, Livia felt something close to peace. Her eyes grew heavy as the lamp cast gentle shadows across the walls. The memory of Salvo's touch on her cheek followed her toward sleep. Not the brutal efficiency he showed their enemies, but the tender care he was learning for her alone. Outside her window, the sun's last rays painted the sky in deep purples and golds. The day's violence seemed distant now, softened by the quiet of evening and the knowledge that she was guarded by a man who could be both ruthless and gentle, depending on whether he was facing a threat or cradling something precious. Livia drifted off with the lamp's warm glow as her anchor, knowing that somewhere nearby, Salvo kept watch. The monster to their enemies, but to her increasingly something else entirely. Something she wasn't ready to name, but felt with every careful touch and protective gesture. The evening settled into familiar rhythms of footsteps and distant voices as Orsini Hall's night shift took their posts. In her room, Livia slept peacefully, the day's lessons in danger and safety, violence and tenderness, merging into dreams beneath the soft lamplight. Morning sunlight streamed through the sunroom's tall windows, gentler than yesterday's market violence. Livia sat at the breakfast table, spreading honey on toast, while Salvo reviewed security reports beside her. The golden light caught in her hair and warmed her skin, almost making her forget the chaos that had brought her here. The peaceful moment shattered when boots thundered down the hallway, echoing against marble floors like warning shots. "Brother!" A younger man burst in, dark hair disheveled, his eyes wild with barely contained fury. "We need to talk." His presence filled the room, stealing the tranquility that had existed moments before. Salvo didn't look up, his finger trailing down a column of numbers. "Damien." His voice betrayed nothing, though his shoulders tensed slightly. "A house war? Over a maid?" Damien's protective skepticism crackled through the air like electricity before a storm. His gaze cut to Livia, measuring, assessing the threat she posed. "The Vieri crew is mobilizing. Their reach goes deeper than Benedict Hale's ever did. You're risking everything we've built for—" "Enough!" Salvo's tone was quiet but final, like a door closing. He set down his papers and met his brother's gaze with unflinching certainty. "My house, my choice. But she's just—" "I said enough." There was no cruelty in it, just certainty hard as steel. Damien's jaw clenched, muscles working beneath his skin, but he backed down. The brothers stared at each other, years of history and unspoken words hanging in the space between them. Later, after Damien stormed out, leaving tension lingering in the air like smoke, Salvo found Livia in the library. She'd retreated there, seeking comfort among leather-bound volumes that asked nothing of her. He settled into an armchair across from her, his large frame somehow fitting perfectly in the refined space. "He means well," he said, one hand rubbing absently at his jaw. "Fear makes him harsh. It's not personal." "Fear of what?" Livia asked, looking up from the book she hadn't really been reading. Salvo's eyes grew distant, focusing on something beyond the room's walls. Our mother died in a shop fire. Protection racket gone wrong. His voice dropped lower, rougher. I got Damien out, but... He traced a scar on his palm, a jagged line across calloused skin. I was 15. Screamed until my throat bled while the building collapsed. Swore I'd never be helpless again. The confession hung between them, heavy with vulnerability neither was accustomed to showing. Livia touched her sleeve where it covered her own scar, a phantom pain flaring beneath her fingertips. They... Her voice caught, trapping the words. She swallowed hard and tried again. Hale's men. They held my arm against the stove, to teach obedience. The memory burned fresh as she pushed up her sleeve, revealing the old burn that puckered her skin like melted wax. That's why, big kitchens. Why I freeze sometimes. Salvo moved with deliberate slowness, telegraphing every movement as he knelt before her chair. His fingers ghosted over the scar tissue, barely touching, yet somehow anchoring her to the present. Then he bent and pressed his lips to the marred skin, a kiss so gentle it made her breath catch. No one touches what belongs to me, he murmured against her skin, breath warm and steady. Then he met her eyes, his gaze intense yet softer than she'd ever seen it. But you're not a possession, Livia. You're a choice. My choice to protect. The intimacy of the moment wrapped around them like a warm blanket, sheltering them both from the harsh realities waiting outside. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, grounding her in the present where she was safe, where pain was a memory and not a promise. As afternoon mellowed into evening, streaking the sky with ribbons of orange and purple visible through tall windows, the household settled into its rhythms. Livia helped Petra inventory linens for the guest annex, finding comfort in the mundane task that required no emotional labor. They counted sheets and pillowcases in companionable silence, marking quantities in Livia's notebook with careful precision. Such neat handwriting, Petra commented, her gaze lingering on the page longer than necessary, fingers brushing against Livia's as she adjusted a stack of towels. Every number perfectly aligned. Old habit, Livia said, pulling back slightly from the contact. From keeping house records. Mr. Hale was particular about his inventories. She didn't mention the punishments for smudged entries or miscounts. The work filled hours with normal activity, helping her forget the market's violence. She focused on thread counts and proper folding, measuring her breaths against each crease, while Petra efficiently organized everything into neat stacks, her movements practiced and smooth. Night fell softly over Orsini Hall, shadows stretching across manicured grounds and security lights blinking on one by one. In her room, Livia heard the scratch of a vinyl record starting in Salvo's adjacent study, the static giving way to music. The melody drifted through the wall, something classical, peaceful, notes rising and falling like gentle waves. She imagined him there, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, guard lowered just slightly in the privacy of night, perhaps a glass of whiskey on the desk, amber liquid catching the low light. The thought was oddly comforting. This dangerous man who kissed her scars and promised protection, finding solace in vintage records and quiet moments. The melody wrapped around her like a lullaby, strings and piano conversing in a language older than their troubles. Her eyes grew heavy as the music played on, a steady human presence in the darkness. Here in his wing, surrounded by his protection, sleep came easily, despite the day's revelations. Livia drifted off to the gentle crackle of vinyl, unaware of Petra's calculating gaze earlier when she'd cataloged more than linens, or the storm gathering beyond their walls in meeting rooms and back alleys. For now there was just the music, the safety, and the lingering warmth of Salvo's lips on her scar, a promise sealed in the most tender way possible. The record played on, its notes floating through the quiet halls like invisible sentinels. Guards changed shifts below, their movements a choreographed dance of protection, radios crackled with all-clear signals, and Livia slept peacefully in her protected corner of Orsini Hall, while somewhere nearby, Salvo kept his vigil. In the darkness, his classical music wove between shadows and moonlight, a thread of normalcy binding them together. The household settled deeper into night, wrapped in layers of security and carefully maintained order that Salvo had built year by year, brick by brick. Through her partly open door, Livia could hear the occasional shuffle of guards passing, their quiet footsteps a reminder of the protection surrounding her. The vinyl's soft melody continued, steady and soothing like a heartbeat beneath the house's quiet breathing. The day's revelations, Salvo's past, his brother's fear, the intimate moment with her scar, merged into the peaceful symphony of nighttime sounds. Her breathing evened out as sleep pulled her under, one hand resting near her scarred arm as if protecting Salvo's touch. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nocturnal activity. But here in this wing, in this moment, there was only the music, the moonlight sliding across polished floors, and the knowledge that she was guarded by a man who understood both violence and tenderness because he had lived in the shadows between them. The record played its final notes as Livia drifted deeper into dreams, tomorrow's dangers still unknown, but temporarily held at bay by walls and men with guns, and a promise sealed with a kiss. For now, there was just this: the quiet of night, the comfort of protection, and the warmth of belonging, not as a possession, but as a choice. The afternoon sun warmed the laundry room's whitewashed walls as Livia sorted through the mending basket with Petra. The routine. Task felt almost normal, checking seams, sorting buttons, marking items that needed repairs. "Your stitching is very precise," Petra noted, watching Livia repair a loose cuff. "Like you were trained professionally." "Years of practice," Livia replied, her fingers steady with the needle. "It was expected at the estate." Petra reached into her apron pocket. "I have something for you." She produced a spool of red thread, identical to the one from Livia's lost apron. "To replace what you lost." Livia's throat tightened. Such a small thing, yet it represented everything. The hidden numbers, her escape, this new life. "Thank you," she managed, taking the spool with trembling fingers. "We take care of our own here," Petra said softly, patting Livia's hand before returning to her sorting. The peaceful afternoon shattered at dusk. In the ops room, screens flashed with warning signals. Jonas's fingers flew across keyboards, his expression grim. "Server breach," he reported as Salvo strode in. "Someone's looped the library cameras." They watched the footage, a brief dark spot in the feed, a shadow with a laundry cart passing through a blind spot. Livia's heart pounded. Her notes had been in that library. "How long was the loop?" Salvo demanded. 3 minutes, 17 seconds, Jonas replied. "Internal access point." Salvo's jaw tightened. Full sweep. Check every drive, every paper. The tension carried into evening. Livia joined Salvo in the library to review the next charity truck route, a potential arms shipment they needed to intercept. Maps spread across the desk, their heads bent close together. "The truck stops here," Livia traced the route with her finger, before heading to the port. "Perfect choke point," Salvo murmured. His hand brushed hers on the map, the air between them charged with electricity. Livia looked up to find his face inches from hers, his eyes dark with unspoken intent. She swayed forward slightly, drawn by the magnetic pull between them. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her lower lip. Her breath caught as he leaned in. The alarm blared, harsh and sudden. They jerked apart as a message flashed across the ops screen mounted on the wall. "Return the Maid to the cliffs, or I return your brother in parts." Salvo went utterly still, like a predator sensing danger. His warmth vanished, replaced by deadly focus. "Jonas," he barked into his radio. "Full lockdown, double the guard on Damien's door." He grabbed Livia's arm, moving swiftly through the corridors. "Safe room," he explained, punching in a code at a hidden panel. A section of wall slid open in his private wing. The safe room was small but secure, reinforced walls, surveillance feeds, emergency supplies. A narrow cot stood against one wall. Salvo checked the room's systems while Livia stood frozen, processing the threat. "They have eyes inside," she whispered. "The camera loop." "I know." His voice was controlled fury. He tapped the intercom panel. "This connects directly to my phone. Use it if anything feels wrong." "Salvo." She caught his sleeve. "They'll hurt Damien." "I will not trade you." The words were steel and stone. Either we all survive or none of us do. That's family. He sealed her inside, the wall panel sliding shut with a soft hiss. Livia sank onto the cot, heart hammering as she listened to boots in the corridor, radio chatter, doors being secured. The intercom crackled. "I meant what I said," Salvo's measured voice came through. "I will not trade you. Rest. I'll check in hourly." Livia lay back on the cot, staring at the ceiling. The safe room hummed with hidden defenses, but she couldn't shake the feeling that danger had already crept inside their walls, wearing a familiar face. Outside, she heard the organized chaos of a household in lockdown. Guards coordinating, security protocols engaging, weapons being distributed. Through it all, Salvo's voice continued steady updates through the intercom, each one a reminder of his promise. She thought of the red thread from Petra now sitting in her sewing basket. Such a simple gift, given with apparent kindness. But now, like everything else, it carried the weight of suspicion. The ops screens in the safe room showed empty corridors, sealed doors, armed men at their posts. Somewhere in the house, a traitor moved among them. Someone who knew about the numbers, about Damien's movements, about the camera blind spots. Livia hugged her knees to her chest, watching the screens cycle through their feeds. The threat hung in the air like smoke, seeping through every crack in their defenses. But Salvo's words echoed in her mind. Either we all survive, or none of us do. She touched the intercom panel, drawing comfort from its solid presence. Whatever came next, she wasn't alone. She had found something worth fighting for, not just survival, but family. The night deepened outside the safe room's walls. Every hour, like clockwork, Salvo's voice came through. All secure. Rest. Each check-in carried the same unspoken message. I choose you. I protect you. I will not let them take you. Livia lay in the narrow cot, wide-eyed in the dim light, listening to the subtle sounds of a fortress on high alert. Whatever threat lurked in their midst, whatever betrayal waited to be revealed, she held on to Salvo's promise like a shield against the darkness. Dawn crept over Orsini Hall like a held breath. Under lockdown, the usual morning bustle had been replaced by methodical precision. Guards delivering meal trays, surveillance feeds cycling on manual review, radio channels maintaining strict silence except for status checks. Livia sat in the smaller breakfast room, picking at dry toast while Damien Orsini paced like a caged animal. His shoulders carried the same broad strength as his brother's. But where Salvo moved with controlled purpose, Damien vibrated with barely contained fury. This is insane, he snapped, turning on her. My life's on the line. For what? Some maid who showed up a week ago? Damien, Salvo warned from his position by the door, but Livia raised her hand. No, he deserves to ask. She met Damien's angry stare. I never asked to be rescued. I never asked for any of this. If my leaving keeps you safe, I'll walk out those gates right now. Like hell, Salvo said quietly. Damien slammed his hands on the table. You don't get it. This is my family, my home, and now we're all trapped because of some numbers you might have seen. Numbers that prove your brother's rival is running weapons through children's charities, Livia shot back. I'm trying to stop people from dying. By getting us killed instead? Enough. Salvo's voice cut through the tension. The threat exists whether Livia stays or goes. This is bigger than one person now. Later that morning, Livia needed a warmer sweater from the laundry annex. A guard named Marco escorted her through the stone corridors, his hand never far from his weapon. The laundry space smelled of detergent and warm cotton, sunlight streaming through high windows. Petra looked up from her sewing station, reading glasses perched on her nose. Good morning, dear. Chilly today, isn't it? Livia nodded, but her attention caught on the thread in Petra's needle, deep red, the exact shade that had marked her apron's secret seam. A faint chemical smell, like copier toner, clung to Petra's soft gray cardigan. Found your sweater? Petra asked, glancing at the ceiling camera with practiced casualness. I was just thinking about those numbers you've been working so hard to remember. Such a clever girl, piecing it all together. Livia's spine prickled. Just dates and roots, nothing special. Oh, I wouldn't say that, Petra smiled warmly. Special enough to have everyone on edge, aren't they? Special enough to bring danger to our door. The words carried weight, despite their gentle tone. Livia clutched her sweater. We should all be careful these days. Yes, we should. Petra turned back to her sewing, humming softly. The day crawled by, the household eating in rotating shifts to maintain security. Livia sat with Salvo in his private kitchen, watching him methodically clear his plate while keeping one eye on the door. Jonas entered as they finished, his usual calm demeanor focused to a sharp edge. Sir, we found something in the library. Partial thumbprint on the window latch. Fresh, and this near the desk. He held up an evidence bag containing a single red thread. Salvo's expression hardened. Internal? Most likely. The timing of the camera loops, the knowledge of blind spots. It had to be someone who knows our routines. Livia's throat tightened as pieces clicked into place. Red thread matching her apron seam, the laundry cart that could move through halls without suspicion. Petra's two natural glances at cameras she shouldn't notice. That night, lying in bed, Livia stared at the ceiling. The same red thread. The perfect use of security. Blind spots. The casual questions about numbers. It all pointed to Petra, but accusation without proof could tear the household apart when they needed unity most. She thought of Petra's gentle manner, the maternal way she cared for everyone's needs. How long had that been a cover? How many secrets had she collected while sorting linens and mending clothes? The guard in the hall passed her door at regular intervals, radio quietly confirming positions. Somewhere in the house, Salvo would be reviewing security feeds, planning countermoves, protecting his family. Damien would be in his reinforced room, angry but alive. And Petra would be in her quarters, perhaps writing reports in that careful hand that labeled fresh linens and documented household supplies. Tomorrow, Livia decided, she would watch. She would note every movement, every accidental timing, every casual question. She would build her case in silence until the evidence was undeniable. The household was balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong move could send them all tumbling into the waiting dark. The night settled heavily around Orsini Hall. Guards patrolled, cameras watched, and somewhere a traitor moved among them, wearing a mask of domestic routine. Livia closed her eyes but didn't sleep, counting the guard rotations, remembering Petra's too perfect attention to surveillance points. In the morning, she would begin her own quiet surveillance. For now, she lay still in the protected darkness of her room, parsing through memories of the past week, laundry carts moving through camera blind spots, casual questions about her work with Salvo, the exact shade of red thread appearing at precisely the right moment. The pieces were there, forming a pattern as clear as the numbers she'd memorized from her apron hem. Tomorrow she would confirm what she already suspected. Tomorrow she would watch the housekeeper who kept everyone's secrets, including, perhaps, the ones that could destroy them all. Salvo's security rounds echoed softly in the hall, his measured footsteps a reminder that she wasn't alone in her vigilance. They would unravel this threat together, one careful thread at a time. Livia trailed Petra through the service corridors, a stack of fresh towels in her arms. Every few minutes, Petra would pause to adjust her apron, always in the same spots where cameras couldn't catch the motion. "These go to the East Wing," Petra said warmly, but Livia noticed how she wrapped her phone in a crisp linen napkin before tucking it into her pocket. The fabric would block the face sensor, she realized, making it impossible to trace usage. "I'll help sort these," Livia offered, watching Petra's movements with new awareness. The older woman's efficiency wasn't just years of experience. It was calculated precision, timed to security patterns. In the garage, tension crackled between the Orsini brothers. Damien's voice echoed off concrete walls. "She's a liability, Salvo. The house comes first. It's what you taught me." "The house stands because we protect our own," Salvo replied, his usual control fraying at the edges. "Since when is she our own? You've known her a week." Damien stepped closer. "They're threatening to cut me into pieces because of her." "I won't throw her to the wolves." "Why? Because she makes you feel human." Damien's words cut deep. "Your weakness for her will get us all killed." Salvo's hands clenched. "Protecting her protects us all. The numbers mean nothing if we're dead." Damien slammed his fist against a tool cabinet. "You're losing control, brother. I see it in your eyes every time she's in the room." The truth of it hung between them. Salvo's jaw tightened, but he couldn't deny how Livia had worked her way past his defenses. In the operations room, Jonas frowned at his console. "Sir," he called to Salvo, "you need to see this." The screen displayed a series of text messages, apparently from Livia to an unknown number. "Library door, 22 Aris. I'll make sure it's clear." The timestamps matched perfectly with Livia's brief trips outside the safe room. Damien cursed softly. "There's your proof." "Impossible," Livia protested, her face pale. "I don't even have phone access. Ask Jonas. My privileges were never activated." "Texts don't lie," Damien snapped. "We move her to neutral ground, now." Livia stood very still, mind racing. The forge was too perfect, the timing too precise. Someone wanted her gone, someone with access to security protocols and house schedules. In her temporary room, she grabbed a pen with trembling fingers. The note came quickly, tears spotting the paper. "Salvo, choose your family. I won't be the reason Damien dies. The numbers are memorized. I'll trade myself to Hale for Damien's safety. Thank you for showing me kindness can exist in darkness." "L." She slipped out through the service exit as dusk painted the sky purple. Her borrowed coat offered little protection against the wind, but she clutched the copied numbers close. One life for another, it seemed fair enough. Salvo found the note minutes later. "Damn it," he breathed, then keyed his radio. "All units mobilize. We end this at the cliffs." Jonas burst in, face tight with realization. "Sir, the texts. Petra's phone signal. It piggybacked Livia's security pass to forge those timestamps. She's been..." Playing us all, Salvo finished, already moving. His control hadn't slipped. It had been slowly, deliberately undermined. Now Livia was out there alone, walking into a trap because someone had made her believe it was the only way to save them. The garage erupted with activity as crews prepped vehicles. Damien stood silent, the truth of his manipulation sinking in. Salvo strapped on his shoulder holster, eyes dark with purpose. The time for careful moves was over. Throughout the house, guards shifted to assault positions. Jonas coordinated through his earpiece, dispatching teams to cut off possible routes to the cliff. Estate. But they all knew Livia had a head start, driven by the very loyalty that made her valuable. In the laundry room, Petra's sewing station sat empty. A spool of red thread lay abandoned, matching the one that had marked Livia's original apron. The security camera above blinked steadily, its blind spot now glaringly obvious to those who knew where to look. Salvo moved with lethal grace through the preparations. His earlier fear of losing control transformed into icy focus. He had taught Livia to spot a tail, to break line of sight. Now he prayed she would remember those lessons long enough for him to reach her. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the grounds of Orsini Hall. Vehicle engines rumbled to life in the underground garage. Guards checked weapons and radio frequencies. And somewhere on the winding road to the cliffs, a young woman walked alone, carrying numbers in her head and sacrifice in her heart, while behind her, an army of shadows prepared to unleash hell to bring her home. Thunder growled across the darkening sky as Livia approached the wrought iron gates of Hale Estate. Rain misted her face, collecting on her eyelashes like tears she refused to shed. The security light cast a sickly yellow glow across the wet stones. She pressed the intercom button, her finger steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. A camera whirred above. "Miss Merrick," a cultured voice answered. What an unexpected pleasure. The gate creaked open, and a guard in a pressed uniform appeared. His politeness felt like a razor wrapped in silk. He guided her up the curved drive, past manicured hedges that had once been her daily responsibility. Benedict Hale waited in the parlor, looking every inch the distinguished philanthropist in his tailored suit. Candlelight flickered across crystal decanters and silver service, creating dancing shadows on the walls. The room smelled of beeswax and expensive cologne. "My dear girl," he smiled, gesturing to a velvet chair. "How good of you to return home. Tea?" Livia perched on the edge of the seat, hands folded in her lap. "I came about Damien Orsini." "Ah, yes, that unfortunate business." Hale poured tea into a delicate cup. "But easily resolved. Simply sign a statement confirming the Orsini abducted you, and all these misunderstandings can be forgotten." The grandfather clock ticked heavily in the corner. Outside, the storm gathered strength, rattling the windows. "The tea will grow cold," Hale prompted when she didn't move. "I prefer clarity to comfort, sir." His smile thinned. "Still stubborn?" "Marcus, perhaps our guest needs help remembering her position." The guard moved forward with rope. Livia's gaze darted to a silver serving tray nearby, noting the sharp edge of an ornate plate. "Bind her to the column," Hale ordered. "Tight enough to leave marks." A mile away, black SUVs rolled to a silent stop in the tree line. Salvo emerged like a shadow, signaling to his team. They moved with practiced precision, checking weapons and communications. The cliff face loomed beside them, wet rock glistening in the sporadic lightning. Jonas distributed climbing gear, his movements economical. "Power grids ready on your mark, camera loops are set." Salvo nodded, remembering every window and blind spot he'd mapped the night he first rescued Livia. The muscle memory was there, but tonight carried higher stakes. Tonight, he wasn't just saving her, he was ending this. Back in the parlor, rope bit into Livia's wrists as Marcus secured her to the decorative column. She kept her breathing even, refusing to give Hale the satisfaction of her fear. The silver tray remained within reach, if she could only create the right moment. "Water," she said quietly. "Please." Hale waved a dismissive hand, and Marcus moved to fetch it. The momentary distraction allowed Livia to shift, fingers stretching toward the tray. Lightning flashed closer, and the first heavy drops of rain pelted the windows. In her coat pocket, something crackled softly. An earpiece, she realized. Jonas must have slipped it in before she left. The lights flickered once, twice, then darkness crashed down as the power failed. "Breathe! I'm here!" Salvo's whisper came through the earpiece, steady and certain. In the chaos of guards checking circuits, Livia's fingers closed around the silver plate. The edge was sharp enough. She began sawing at the rope, the storm covering any sound. Hale's voice cut through the darkness. "Check the grounds! This is too convenient!" Beyond the garden wall, Salvo and his team scaled the wet stone with mechanical efficiency. Years of practice made the cliff face as familiar as any urban terrain. At the first window, he deployed a signal jammer, buying precious seconds before any alarms could trigger. Glass shattered in distant corridors as his men breached multiple points. Salvo moved like smoke through the side window he'd chosen, neutralizing the first guard with a precise chokehold. The second went down just as quietly, weapon secured before it could clatter on the marble floor. Thunder boomed directly overhead as Livia worked the last threads of rope. Her wrist was raw, but freedom was worth the pain. Through the earpiece, she heard Salvo's measured breathing drawing closer. A guard's flashlight beam swept the parlor. Livia gathered the loose rope, calculating angles in the darkness. The heavy brass lamp to her left would serve her purpose. She took a deep breath, remembering Salvo's lessons about timing and distraction. The rope sailed through the air, catching on the lamp with a metallic ping. The guard turned sharply, weapon raised toward the sound. That split second was all Salvo needed. He crossed the room like a predator's shadow, every movement perfectly controlled. Livia's heart pounded as she tracked his approach, knowing that this time, she wasn't just waiting to be saved. She was part of the plan, creating the opening he needed. Together, they would end this game of power and pain. The storm raged outside, but in here, in this candlelit parlor where she'd once lived in fear, Livia felt nothing but calm certainty. Salvo moved closer, his footsteps silent on the expensive carpet. Lightning illuminated his face for a fraction of a second. Not the cold mask of a Mafia Don, but the focused expression of a man coming to claim what was his, to protect what was his. The guard never saw him coming. The backup generators sputtered to life, bathing the parlor in sickly yellow light. Hale straightened his cuffs, unruffled despite the chaos. A laptop screen flickered on the desk behind him, showing a live newsfeed. "Perhaps you'd like to see your handiwork, Miss Merrick." He turned the screen. "Breaking news, domestic worker kidnapped by crime family." Livia's stomach clenched at the footage, security cameras showing her rescue from the cliff road, carefully edited to look like an abduction. The caption scrolled, "Prominent philanthropist Benedict Hale seeks return of employee." "The police will be quite interested," Hale continued smoothly. "Your friend Orsini's operation exposed, his reputation in tatters. Unless, of course, you'd like to reconsider that statement I mentioned." Livia met his gaze steadily. "You're right. The truth should come out." Before he could stop her, she stepped deliberately into frame of the still broadcasting camera. Her voice was clear, unwavering. "My name is Livia Merrick. I worked as a live-in maid for Benedict Hale for 3 years. On April 15th, his men held me down and burned my arm on the kitchen stove when I questioned unusual deliveries." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing the twisted scar tissue. "This was my punishment for seeing too much. The charity trucks that leave here every Tuesday and Friday. Check container manifest K1192. You'll find weapons, not blankets." Thunder cracked outside as she recited the numbers from her apron hem, matching them to specific shipment dates. "These codes were my insurance. That's why Mr. Hale ordered me killed last week. Salvo Orsini saved my life." Hale's composure cracked. "Shut that camera off!" "The burns weren't the worst part," Livia continued, her quiet voice carrying. "It was watching good people believe his lies, believing him when he said his charity helped people, while his trucks carried death instead of hope." Movement flickered on the gallery above. Petra, emerging from the shadows with a pistol raised. The sight of the trusted housekeeper, now revealed as a threat, made Livia's words falter for the first time. But Jonas was already there, dropping from the rafters in a controlled fall. He slammed into Petra with precise force, sending them both sprawling. The gun skittered across the floor as they grappled. A shot cracked out, the bullet grazing Jonas's shoulder before the weapon spun away. Salvo's hand tightened on his own weapon, but his voice remained deadly calm. "The confession, Hale. Now." "You have nothing." "I have everything. Your ledgers, your routes, your connections to Vieri. Sign, or I ensure every detail reaches not just the press, but your competitors." Salvo's smile was razor-sharp. "How long do you think you'll survive once they know you're compromised?" Hale's face went slack. Salvo pushed a paper forward, and Hale's signature was shaky but legible. One phone call from Salvo triggered the information dump to multiple news outlets. "Confirmation received," Jonas called from above. still pressing Petra face down despite his bleeding shoulder. A gust of wind rattled the windows. The storm was directly overhead now, and a toppled candle sent flames racing up the heavy curtains. Smoke began to curl along the ceiling as ledger ashes caught and spread. "Time to go," Salvo said, his hand finding Livia's lower back. The gesture was possessive but gentle, a promise, not a cage. They moved swiftly through the chaos of evacuating guards and staff. The fire spread hungrily, feeding on decades of dark secrets hidden in those walls. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The terrace doors burst open under another thunderclap. Rain lashed sideways, soaking them instantly as they emerged into the storm. Behind them, orange flames began to devour the mansion's facade, while blue and red lights strobed at the bottom of the cliff road. Livia turned to Salvo, rain streaming down her face. His eyes were intense, locked on hers with an expression that made her breath catch. "I chose you," she said simply. His response was to pull her close, one hand tangling in her wet hair. When his lips found hers, it wasn't gentle. This kiss was claiming, consuming, everything they'd held back through weeks of growing trust and simmering attraction. Livia met his passion with her own, fingers gripping his shirt as the storm raged around them. The kiss tasted of rain and smoke, of endings and beginnings. Salvo's arms tightened, lifting her slightly off her feet as sirens screamed below and his empire of protection proved stronger than Hale's empire of lies. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating them in stark relief. The Mafia dawn and the Maid, finding truth and trust in each other while the corrupt world burned behind them. In that electric moment, with rain drumming on the terrace stones and Salvo's heart beating steady against her palm, Livia felt truly free for the first time. The kiss softened but didn't break, becoming something tender and certain. Salvo's thumb traced her cheek, wiping away rain or tears or both. The gesture said everything words couldn't, that she was safe, that she was his, that together they'd built something stronger than the forces trying to tear them apart. More vehicles were arriving at the base of the cliff, their lights cutting through the storm. The fire had taken hold of the east wing now, flames reflecting off the rain-slicked gardens. Heat pushed at their backs while wind whipped their clothes, but neither moved to break apart. This moment belonged to them. This victory, this connection, this proof that even in the darkest places, light could win. Livia's fingers traced the strong line of Salvo's jaw as he kissed her again, claiming and cherishing at once, while his empire secured their freedom below and Hale's corruption crumbled behind them. Dawn painted Orsini Hall in gentle gold, so different from the fortress dark of weeks before. Sunlight streamed through clear windows where boards had once blocked the world out. The halls breathed easier now, as if the house itself had shed its armor. Jonas stood by the security desk, his arm in a professional sling. His quiet competence remained unchanged, though he now allowed himself the occasional smile when reviewing the day's reports. The bullet graze was healing clean, a small price, he'd said, for ending a greater threat. In the sunroom, where morning light made the plants cast delicate shadows, Damien Orsini cleared his throat. His usual bristling energy had softened to something more contemplative as he faced Livia. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "The house is stronger with you in it. I'm sorry I doubted that." Livia accepted his words with a gentle nod, understanding how much it cost his pride to admit the mistake. "Family protects family," she replied, using the Orsini motto with new authority. The past week had reshaped their world with stunning speed. Within hours of the fire, press outlets across the city had run Hale's confession. His charity empire crumbled under 3 days of raids, each warehouse and front company exposing deeper layers of corruption. Vieri's crews scattered like roaches from light, their pipelines severed, and their shield of legitimacy in tatters. Petra sat in county custody now, awaiting charges after doctors cleared her concussion from the gallery fight. Her betrayal still stung, but Livia refused to let it poison the home she was building here, and she was building it, deliberately, thoughtfully, with the freedom of true choice. Her own phone rested in her pocket, her keycard opening doors at will. She'd chosen a bright corner room overlooking the gardens, filling it with soft textures and books of her own. The walls held art she'd selected, not hidden behind, and her windows stayed unshuttered to welcome each sunrise. But her real work happened in the legal offices downtown, where she partnered with Salvo's team to resurrect the charity network's original purpose. Food trucks now delivered actual aid, their routes and inventory tracked by independent auditors. She'd turned a tool of corruption into genuine hope, proving that even broken systems could be reformed with enough determination. The big kitchen, once a chamber of nightmares, transformed under her quiet persistence. Late afternoon sun poured through its windows as she and Salvo moved in comfortable synchronization, preparing dinner together. She'd insisted the door stay open. No more trapped spaces, no more hidden corners. "Pass the basil," she said, and Salvo's hand brushed hers as he complied. The touch lingered, deliberate and gentle. He moved differently here, tempering his usual precision with a softness reserved for her alone. Steam rose from pasta and garlic sizzled in oil. Livia's hands remained steady as she worked near the stove, the old burn scar on her arm now a badge of survival rather than shame. Salvo watched her from the corner of his eye, proud but never hovering, respecting her victory over this particular fear. Evening drew them to the main hall, where staff and family gathered in a scene that would have been impossible weeks ago. Wine flowed, and quiet laughter echoed off the high ceiling. Jonas raised a glass with his good arm, while Damien lounged against a pillar, his usual tension absent. Salvo stood, commanding attention without raising his voice. The room hushed as he turned to Livia, something small and bright catching the light in his palm. The ring was elegant in its simplicity, a band that wouldn't catch on fabric or interfere with work, yet perfectly sized to her hand. He slid it onto her finger, his touch gentle over the healed scar tissue. "To the world," he said, his voice carrying to every corner. "I may always be a monster. It's a role I chose and a price I pay. But to you," his fingers tightened slightly on hers, "to you I will be mercy, for all our days." The hall remained silent, bearing witness. This wasn't just a proposal, but a declaration of trust earned, of choices made, of power balanced with protection instead of fear. Morning found them on the cliff path, walking side by side where once a desperate chase had changed everything. The sea below lay mirror calm, so different from that storm-tossed night. Their footprints tracked parallel in the damp earth, leading back toward the hall's distant silhouette. Livia breathed in salt air and possibility. The night she died in that crashed car had given her an unexpected rebirth into a life she chose with clear eyes and full understanding. The kitchens held no more terror, storms brought no panic, and ledgers were tools for truth instead of secrets. She glanced at Salvo, noting how the morning light softened his sharp edges without diminishing his strength. His hand found hers, warm and steady, the ring catching sunlight like a promise kept. They walked on, leaving the cliff's edge behind. Where once she'd fled in terror, now she strode with purpose. The hall awaiting them was no longer a fortress, but a home, one built on truth instead of fear, protection instead of possession, and a love that had transformed them both.